I'm gonna climb a tree.
Watch out.
Ah!
Hi there. Welcome to another episode of the Forbidden Limb Podcast. I'm your host, Richard New, and I'm here as always with Brian Hink and Jeremy Commander. This week, well, first off, a little aside. We told you that the schedule might be a little hinky from here coming up here. I did have a son born in since the last episode. Rook Arkham New. Oh no, there's something over your face right now. So, there's Brian behind. You can see Rook there. Perfectly healthy young boy, born on February 21st. So we were very happy to bring him into the world and go away. That hurt.
With the first name of Rook, a chess piece,
exactly.
And then a middle name of Arkham.
Right.
Oh,
or Batman, because that's awesome.
Batman or Arkham Horror.
You could do that. I'm the Batman fan.
That is like the greatest name for a baby. So
exactly.
That's,
yeah. I love that he's like I love a game one-on-one with someone where you're trying to compete with them and trying to outsmart them, and chess is just sort of the epitome of that.
Yeah.
So I really like the idea of my son being named after a gaming piece. That's.
I can't believe your wife let you get away with that, though.
Both were her idea.
Wow.
It's so weird. I know.
Wow.
I'm married to a wonderful woman.
I'm of the mind that you should give your kid a normal first name, so they can't get mad at you in grade school when they get picked on, and a really wacky middle name. So when they grow up and become an adult, they have good Google juice. So when someone Googles their full name, they get a unique result. Because if your kid grows up to be a musician or an author and has a really common name, that's terrible for them. But then a really unusual middle name, they go by their full name, and now people can find them at Google.
Smart idea. So let's talk about some other smart ideas. How's that for a second? We're going to be talking about today some tips on how you should go about engaging in a contract to help get your game either published or I don't know. Does it happen on the manufacturing side?
Well, not really manufacturing.
Okay.
I guess it can, but it doesn't really. We're talking today about designer and publisher contracts.
Okay.
So yeah,
All right.
When you publish a designer's game.
So let's start off with what would be some basic information that you would want to include in your contract to make sure that you are protected in some way as the designer.
Yeah, we can. This is actually a good time to do this because Jeremy and I actually entered into an agreement to publish Jeremy's game. So we can just go over that contract section by section quickly and just cover kind of the highlights of what you should look out for, both from the designer perspective and then the publisher perspective. So I'll make this available too. I'll redact the important information.
Past Brian reminds you to not hit the table.
That's right. That's right. Don't hit the table, Brian. Okay. So, we can just go over just each section.
Our relationship is so good, we're just holding hands.
Brian?
Yeah.
Please look through the contract.
All right. So,
and I can say that in the last few months, I've signed 3 contracts with 3 different publishers.
Yeah.
And so I signed one as it was, and I asked for changes to the other 2.
Okay.
And so I can give you kind of an insight what was going on with that.
So definitely go into like sort of an etiquette of how you would go about responding to the parts in a contract. Because that's something that a lot of us haven't done in your regular life. You get an apartment, you get a new job, stuff like that. You sign whatever they put in front of you. So this is the part where you can actually have some say in what the words are.
Right.
So.
And it is important too because, like a lot of times for a designer, they're like, I just want to get my game out there.
Right.
I'll sign anything you put in front of me. I don't want to make the publisher mad. I don't want to do anything that will maybe delay it. Where now it's going to take years before it's out there. They just want to get that game out there and they want to get it out there quickly. So, but it is an important.
And I would say it depends on the level of publisher you're signing with too. So I said one game with a smaller publisher. No offense.
Nope. No.
One with a medium-sized publisher and one with a big, ginormous publisher. And so with the small and medium publisher, I felt good about asking about, can we change the wording on this or can we add a clause for that? Because I knew they'd be responsive to that. With the big, giant publisher, then you're like, well, does it go through 3 levels of approval and a lawyer? And how did you want to ask? You sort of not like, I'm going to get published by the big, huge publisher. I'm just going to take it. And so that you have to decide whether you're going to press your luck or try to get the wording or the language of the clauses you want.
Let me ask you something, just because before we get too far into this, is there a place that you can go and sort of get a generic contract as a
Yes.
Please.
Yeah. So there are various websites that will have boilerplate legalese or contracts. One of them is called LegalZoom. So LegalZoom it's not a law firm, but it sells basically legal templates and the forms you need, and will walk you through the process of starting a corporation,
I've heard
creating a
about that
contract.
before.
Yeah.
They advertise on different podcasts. So I have heard their advertising.
It's good for certain things, though. It's not very good for tabletop publishing because
for that specific application.
I've looked for that for examples, and I found very little. I actually found one for artwork that I used actually from LegalZoom, but afterwards, like the way I kind of cobbled it together, I regret doing it. I should have found a better template. So we actually do need to say, we're not giving legal advice. None of us are lawyers.
Yes.
Yes.
So
I will make sure that disclaimer is flashing on the screen right now.
Before you do anything, that we say, make sure you check with a lawyer first. And in fact, in general, if you can afford it, have a lawyer make your contract. It's not something we're spending money on right now. I think we will in the future, but this is more for if you're just starting out. We're trying to give you just some tips, just from publisher and designer perspective, for what you should look out for. So the first section is just going to go over the parties. It'll go over what you're talking about. In this contract, it's just designer, publisher. You just got to define that up front. We also put in the name of the game, which at the point when we did this, it was under a different name.
Yep.
So we called it Cold War Agents or Agents of Euphoria. Those were two names that it used. Now that we've actually gone through development, it's become Booze Barons. That's the new name for it. But as long as it's understandable what it used to be, you're just trying to make sure everybody understands the game you're talking about. And then the next section is grant of publishing rights. This is talking about how the really high level, what are you publishing and how are you publishing it? Is it certain languages, certain countries? Maybe I only get to publish the English language version, or is it all languages? What are my rights? All right, keeping going. So we've got the copyright. So you're basically saying the publisher gets to copyright your material. Next we have designer's warranties and indemnity. So this is just saying that the designer is the creator of this work. Okay. So they're just guaranteeing to the publisher that they didn't just like grab this from another designer and say, hey, this is my game. It's actually their work. Next we have modifications. So this is just saying the publisher, like in this contract, we say we have the right to change absolutely everything. And so, as we've gone through development, there have been some things that we've changed. Many of them, I would say most of them, we've changed back to what you actually started with. Many of them. But this gives us final say. So each publisher will involve a designer in different ways and at different levels. Jeremy and I and Clayton, my publishing partner, are all working on this, together. When Jeremy says something, we consider absolutely everything that he says, but this just says we have the final say in it. Okay. Advertising and promotion, this is just the publisher has the right to say that Jeremy designed it, and and you can say in here, maybe you can use their picture or biographical information about the designer, things that you can include in advertising and promotions. Name on the box, this is important to some people, especially designers trying to get their name out there. So here we say the designer's name will appear on the front of the box. Some it might just be in an instruction manual, maybe just on the back, maybe not appear there at all, but is something that, of course, we want to give this to the designer and say, don't worry, your name is going to be on there.
That one's not too important to me, but I can see for some people it is.
Yep, absolutely. Competing work, so this says that a designer can't just create. So Booze Barons is coming out. It'll be coming out soon. We'll do a Kickstarter for it. But Jeremy could create the same game and just call it something else and have another publisher do it. Something that would be very, very similar. That would maybe.
Can we hold for a minute to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah. Because this is a question that comes up a lot. What's to stop the publisher from just ripping off my game wholesale and doing it? And truthfully, almost nothing.
Yeah.
Other than the board game industry is fairly tight-knit.
It is.
And if a publisher does that, that destroys their reputation within the industry, and no designer is going to want to shop a game to them or show them any games in the future.
Yep.
And so, because that would just ruin your reputation. So that does not... I've heard of one case of that happening, but that's exceptionally rare. in courts have held that no one owns game mechanics. So I could make like a rule-for-rule clone of Monopoly. And the board can have the same number of spaces and all that kind of stuff. As long as I don't use any of Monopoly's artwork or their trademark words, like the word Monopoly or Baltic Avenue, I'm good, and I could potentially get away with it. Now, Parker Brothers has lots of lawyers who come after me, so that's probably a bad idea. But in general, no one owns game mechanics. In a few rare cases, you can patent a very specific game mechanic, like Magic had the tapping, untapping patent that ran out. But those are very rare, and patents are expensive and take time to do. So, in general, anybody can make a game that is a clone of another game, and as long as they don't use the artwork or the trademarks involved, they can get away with it.
All right. Let's move on to money. This is an important thing for some people. So royalties, we have a section on that. So here you would say, and this can be very different from publisher to publisher. How are you paid for your game? Maybe I just buy the game from
right.
Maybe I just say
flat sum.
$5,000. This is my game, and now I get all the royalties as a publisher. But what's most common is that you get a percentage of the sale, and that's the wholesale. The revenue that I get from the game is usually what it is, and you get a percentage. So a smaller company would probably give you a larger percentage. A bigger one would probably be smaller. I haven't talked to you about exactly what you got, and I won't ask that, but that's what I would guess you would see, now that you have a small, medium, and large, that the amount of money you get from each copy is going to be,
And in general, most of the ranges are like 4 to 8%.
Yep.
I've seen some higher in some cities, and I've seen some lower. And there may be an upfront payment. Like, we're going to pay you this much money up front. I actually asked Brian to take that out of the contract, the upfront payment.
Yep.
I don't need a check up front to feel good about selling the game. And if the game is a failure, I make no money off of it, and that's okay with me, because I'd rather have the publisher be happy about that. Most publishers will do is say, well, we'll give you a check for $250 or $500 or $1,000, and when your royalties exceed that amount, then we'll send you or issue you a second check. And I personally would rather not get the upfront dollar value and just get the first check. It's based on the time frame of the contract when it pays out, because the contracts will say some pay out quarterly, some pay out annually, some pay out every 6 months. I'd rather just get the check, and then I know exactly how many copies I sold or how well the game is doing. That's more valuable to me than the upfront payment. And in the case of a small or medium publisher, not having the upfront payment makes it easier for them to launch the game. They can have a lower Kickstarter goal. They have less fixed costs to get it off the ground, which makes me excited, because they're more likely to get the game out earlier, give it a priority, because they haven't paid any money for it, right? But until it starts making money, they're
What I can use that I can use that to encourage someone to go with me as a publisher too, because if you have a large publisher and you have a small publisher like Overworld Games, it could be something that I could give you, like, well, I'll give you $1,000 right now up front to go with me, and then that would be taken out of the royalties that you would eventually get. But it's kind of nice to have that chunk of money right up front.
You said a rule of thumb was like 4% to 8% for the royalties. Is there a type of game that gets a higher percentage? What do you say?
Maybe if you have a game that is going to be a very high ticket game, a $90 game, maybe. If the game has won a bunch of awards and it's a hot game, you would be able to negotiate a higher percentage.
If you're a more well-known designer,
if you're a well-known designer, you can command a higher rate, like a movie star.
Sure.
I would say that Cardboard Edison did a survey of designer contracts and released an infographic that has all about board game designer contracts. That is fantastic, and you can get that through the Cardboard Edison Patreon or through their Tumblr blog. I would look at that, because that will give you ballpark royalties and contract terms and all kinds of stuff if you're looking for that information.
Okay.
Another thing that's important in this section too is that there's different types of royalties. So we cover different things like if a expansions, what percentage of royalties would you get from an expansion that you design? Then so that derivative works is kind of anything derivative of this work. So like an expansion would be, or a sequel. So if it's not designed by the designer, maybe we decide to do an expansion for Booze Barons that Clayton and I design. but it's based on booze barons, and it goes with booze barons. We will still give a certain percentage to Jeremy because he created the original.
Okay.
Also,
and when you're a designer, you can negotiate or ask in your contract whether or not you have approval rights on expansions or derivative works. So some designers will negotiate that, hey, you cannot make an expansion for this game or a rework it in certain ways without my approval, and they'll put that in their contract if they're worried about it. It depends on you, how flexible you are. The more clauses you have like that, the more difficult or less attractive it is for a publisher. So you have to decide how much you're willing to let go versus you want to specify that I have right of refusal on this, or I have veto right on expansions, that kind of thing.
Hey, if it's your baby, that might be more important than
correct.
Correct.
There's two more parts that are important to this section, and that is if an international, so another publisher, so like if I will give rights to other publishers out there around the world to publish it in different languages, and because they have a distribution network and they have retailer connections in Russia, and I don't have that. I don't have those, so I'll let a publisher out there handle that. And so you should also specify, whether you get royalties from that as well. And then the other one is really important to us, and that's the percentage of the Kickstarter funds. So whether or not the designer gets any percentage of that. And that's another thing where a designer might not want it, because then if you don't take a cut, I can have a lower funding goal, But if you do, then I have to be a higher one, but you'll get another, that'll be kind of a way to get some cash up front. So those are the important sections for the royalties.
Makes sense.
Next, statements and payments. This is just when you want to get paid. So if I wire transfer you some money, I have to pay for that wire transfer. You have to pay to receive it. So you don't want to do it every month. So usually you'll do it every 6 months or possibly every quarterly, but more likely every 6 months or a year. And so this just says how often you get paid and usually when you get paid, on April 1st and October 1st, something like that. And then also usually which statements do we have to give to you?
Can I mention about getting paid?
Yeah.
So people I know who are established game designers and have signed many games with different publishers, this is one of the biggest factors for them in determining who to sign with again, is how promptly they pay out their royalties. Whereas some, I won't sign another game with so-and-so company because not even once a year does they get around, oh yeah, we're going to get that royalty show, oh yeah, we have to add it up, oh yeah. And he goes, I won't do another deal with those guys just because they're really slow about doing that. And I can't tell how many copies they've sold, how it's doing, and they're not transparent or they're very slow. And other publishers that are more transparent and good about paying that out, even if it's not a whole lot of money, that you know what's going on, are more desirable. So I've heard from several established designers like, well, I won't sign another game with so-and-so, or I prefer to sign with these guys because of that.
Yep.
Now that makes me wonder if, are there publishers out there that you've ever heard of that might do some creative accounting to try and suggest that, they don't owe you as much?
Yeah,
I mean, I've seen that in other businesses, so I'm just sort of, okay.
Yep.
Yep, that
It's
can
pretty
happen.
easy to do in this industry too.
You may have a clause in your contract that you can audit the books, or you can look at that financial information and they have to show it to you.
Usually it's just a report and you trust the publisher. But I'll say from the publisher perspective too, it's hard for us to really give you accurate numbers sometimes too, because from our distributors and the retailers, there's so many levels that oftentimes a distributor will kind of let a retailer kind of slide maybe a month or two in their payment, and then it slides back to you, and now you have to wait longer to get your payment. And so now when it gets back to the designer, it's just sometimes it's just hard to do it. Plus, you are trying to do so many things at once. I mean, it's really important to us, to pay every 6 months is when we do it. Every 6 months, and we try to keep everybody on the same schedule so that only it's April and October that we have to worry about that. But it takes a lot of our time to calculate everything and then to cut checks. And so another one that you asked to add is purchasing copies. So this was something that I didn't put in there. It's not in our standard contract. But you asked to be able to purchase copies at a discounted price. Can you tell us why?
Sure, yeah. I put that in all my contracts. So all the ones I've signed, I've asked that I either be able to buy games at cost or at wholesale. And the reason for that is I want to make the game successful. And this is a win-win for both me and the publisher. So I say to the publisher, hey, I want to be able to go and buy 50 copies and then take them to a local con. Demo the game, maybe I run a tournament with some sort of prize, and I sell copies at that con. Now, the publisher isn't losing money in this scenario because those are sales they likely would not have made for the game if I wasn't there to personally promote the game. And people will play the game at the con that don't necessarily buy it there. Or they play their buddy's copy who bought it at the con, and like, oh, I like the game, I'm going to go out and buy it. So this is going to generate sales for the publisher as I am advertising and marketing and pushing that game out there. And so I want the ability to buy games at cost so I can go and sell them at the con and try to make a little bit of money off that. It's not that I'm looking to make money, it's that that's what makes it cost viable to do that.
Yep. And I want to encourage the designer to go promote the game because that's cool to play a game with the designer.
And it'll also allow me to do things like a promotion or a giveaway or I go on a podcast to talk to the game and say, oh, I want to raffle one off or whatever.
Signed copy. Probably.
You got it. Signed copy, things like that. Or do it with copy and the promo card, another kind of thing.
Okay.
An important section here, reversion of rights and termination. So this is important to the designer to have this in here. What happens if we sign this contract and then I get busy with stuff, maybe there's financial issues with the company, for some reason I can't publish the game. At a certain point, the designer wants to be able to get rights back and then be able to shop it to another publisher. Mm-hmm. So, you might have 2 years in here. If we don't publish the game in 2 years, Jeremy gets the game back and he can publish it with another.
Contract dissolves.
Yep.
Okay. So like the Fantastic Four and Fox, right?
Yeah, the movie rights. This is a big scenario for a lot of designers where you sign with a smaller or medium publisher and they stop doing business or they go bankrupt. And this has happened to quite a few people. There are some famous examples like Glory to Rome on Kickstarter was too successful and that company went bankrupt. Mm-hmm. Cambridge Game Factory, and they stopped producing games. One of my buddies, who's a game designer, which I probably shouldn't mention, signed his best game with Cambridge Games Factory right before that happened. Mm-hmm. And so now they own the rights to the game, and poof, they're out of business.
Right.
So his game is locked up and in a place where he can't get it back. So I know some designers, not only they put a reversion clause in their contract, if the game is not published in X date, I get it back automatically. Some also put a buyback clause, saying that if it's not published by so date, I can pay X amount of money and buy the game back.
Yep.
Or I can buy the game.
You can buy out the inventory of that game. Yep.
Right.
Yep. And so this.
Do I mention a little more? I'm sorry.
Sure.
The other thing why this matter is there are some games, same game companies that have a huge pipeline, and they have signed games that will not come out for 3 or 4 years because their pipeline is that far in advance. So I'll give you an example, like Rio Grande has a big pipeline. Their games are planned out very far in advance. Another designer I know got a game signed with Rio. Rio's a big publisher, very prestigious to have a game from Rio. And I was asking, well, how long did you sign it? Oh, I signed it this way back. When will it come out? It's with this far in the future. I'm like, wow. And he goes, that's fine. He goes, I'm willing to sit around and wait years for Rio to publish that game because my name will be on a Rio Grande game. And that's a big prestige thing for me as a designer. So.
And the rest of this stuff is pretty standard. You can take a look at what we have up on the screen, and then also, we'll include this and make this available with all the important information redacted from it. And that's about it. So, Jeremy, do you have anything else that you want to add?
I do. What do you put in the contract to make sure you're protected?
I want to add the top 9 things that you should consider in your contract.
Couldn't come up with one more so we could do a top 10 list.
Well, really? Maybe I'll think of one. No, top 9. And so, ability to buy copies at cost, reversion clause, veto on the theme, veto on gameplay changes. I think it's a bad idea, but I know people do that. Right of refusal on expansions or licenses. Whether you're willing to do interviews or promote it, travel to promote it. When the contract goes into effect, when it expires, buyback clause, and rights, U.S., international, digital. Those are the 9 things at the top.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for taking me through how to go through a contract and how to make sure that you're protected as a game designer. I want to thank you guys for joining us in another Forbidden Limb podcast. If you'd like to contact us and give us any information or ask us any question that you'd like, you can contact us at theforbiddenlimb@gmail.com. Till next time, I'm Richard New, and I'm here with Brian Hink and Jeremy Commander, and I'll see you across the table sometime.
Woo!